Pokemon.
Yes, fine. I play Pokemon. I'm not just the kind of turbo nerd who wallows in his own Cheeto runoff while getting winded when he overuses his thumbs too rigorously. I'm the creepy kind of turbo nerd that Megan's Law was drafted for and blah blah blah. You know what? I'm not gonna apologize for Pokemon. Yeah, okay, the franchise erected around it is painfully lame and the gameplay itself is simplistic and it's a ridiculous grindfest with no real redeeming story value. But you know what? It's also fun. It's addicting. It's a swell, well-built game that has no more innate offensiveness to it than, say, Farmville. And at least I don't spend my every waking moment sending torrents of invites to play Pokemon to an ocean of uninterested parties. And at least I have the self-awareness to know it's stupid and embrace it anyway. But I have to admit, I'm also one of the multitudes who have become more disenchanted with a new Pokemon introduced with each installment. The legendaries look like Mechagodzilla, the overabundance of throwaways that seem to get only progressively more embarrassing looking, and of course the straight-up weird and completely unidentifiable ones that look more like a product of a Silent Hill fuel bender than based on any actual animal. But when news of Pokemon's White and Black came around, I have to admit I was a little pumped. The stars looked pretty rockin' as they always do, but even the side ones managed to look serviceable. It looked like a bit of a return to form, perhaps to usher in this new 3D sort of animated kind of world they constructed for my Pokemans. When I got this game, my faith seemed founded at first. I totally dug the little Scottish Terrier looking throwaway as a magnificent step up from the pants-wettingly hilarious Bidoof. I mean seriously, Bidoof. The designer of that Pokemon must have been having a really rough day at this point, or maybe just started to hate his job. I can't imagine they didn't do this on purpose. I also dug the addition of a cool, sleek cat that didn't turn into some hideous lardass after its evolution. Hell, even the throwaway bird turned out pretty awesome. Then came this thing. This Munna. And all of a sudden, something was amiss. Seriously, it's even worse in motion. It's a giant floating fetus that evolves to belch out smoke. I mean, holy shit, this is pure nightmare fuel here. How on earth did this thing come to be? What dire straits of evolution made this half-formed monstrosity? The blobs of flesh from Splice didn't terrify me this much. This thing belonged in the withdrawal scene in Train Spotting more than it ever belonged in Pokemon. I've started to feel the inevitable roll downhill start right about here. It only got worse with the weird monkeys. I mean, okay, they're not so bad, but you could tell the second you got one that it was just a stand-in for whatever elemental attack you were lacking until you could catch a better one. This thing might as well have been Bidoof's primate evolution as far as I was concerned. And then came this game's Geodude. Just look at this. I mean, it's nice to know they contracted someone from the Georgia O'Keeffe School of Design. Come on, how does this thing exist? Even tossing aside the notion of living sentient rock, this thing has no identifiable features. It's just 2 feet attached to a rock vagina. And come on, you've seen some of the people in Pokemon. We all remember that creepy fuck that ran the fan club in the first one. You just know some creepy, desperate monsters. And what should accompany this piece of off-putting yonic imagery? Of course, what else? A flying Bidoof. Jesus Christ, just look at this thing. What horrible things do you suppose this guy did in his previous life to be reincarnated as a Woobat? One eye, buck teeth, derpy little bat wings. Oh, and its name is Woobat. Good God, man, why do this? Why make this thing? Is that thing its eye? Why is its pupil heart-shaped? Does it have some weird version of 80 syndrome? Is the heart shape supposed to imply that it just wants love? Or is this not even an eye? Okay, no, it can't be, because when it evolves, it kind of lowers on its head a bit and real-looking eyes finally appear. But then why one hideous heart-shaped nostril? Why? It's not just that this too looks pretty fucking embarrassing. I mean, come on, I'm at an age where if anything I should just be embarrassed for playing Pokemon anyway. I've made my peace with charging into combat with this fluttering doofus. But honestly, it's just that this is also a bit off-putting. I don't know, it's like, if you just took out the garish blue and pink, it would all of a sudden become sinister. And the evolution is worse because it has this weird flesh-toned proboscis sticking out, like some weird offshoot of Tetsuo from Akira. This one's a bit of a minor nitpick, more so than the rest of this anyway, but I'd like to address this one. Yeah, design-wise it's not really all that offensive, it's just the name. Girder. I mean, I get it. It's holding an I-beam. It's supposed to elicit the word girder. But the spelling, really, it just ends up sounding kind of defective, you know? I don't watch the show, but I seriously expect its sole form of speech to be girder. Then there's also these guys, Throw and Sock. Again, I get it. They're this game's Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan. But could the design be any more lazy? Are those gis they're wearing their skin? Do they make them in the wild? All they look like are these weird Abbott and Costello shaped homunculi. And then things calm down for a bit. The Pokemon that follow aren't exactly knockouts in the design department, but they're not offensive in any particular way. The weird little centipede evolutions are kind of creepy, but that probably owes more to the time in which they've been created at this point. Still, for a long time, the bug Pokemon looked either goofy, adorable, or badass. This guy really just looks like a massive insect. Then there's Sigilif. What the fuck is this supposed to be? Take a good long look at this. Tell me what single part of this thing is supposed to be identifiable. Is this just because I'm from the West? Do I just lack the appropriate cultural context that the Japanese must apparently have in spades? Is this rooted in the same reason why I don't find tentacle rape all that sexy? What are its eyes? Is that thing at the top its eye, or are those other things? No, okay, but are those wings? How do they work? Why are all of its appendages forks? It's a ghost Pokemon. Is this what flying Pokemon look like when their spirits don't meet their final resting place? I don't... Next Pokemon. Yeah. No, next Pokemon. Okay, see, this I get. It's a floating sarcophagus. Lazy, yes. Bizarre, sure, of course. But it's a ghost Pokemon, and at least it kind of fits the bill. And then, building on the vaguely feminine theme of Boulder Pussy, here's the Breastichu. Seriously, now we're looking at some creepy sad bastard Pokemon designer's dream girl come to life. Its name is even Gothita. I would not be surprised if this is literally the name of this designer's fetish turned nightmarish reality. And why the Breastichu crack, you ask? Why, because every subsequent evolution causes it to double the number of udders it has. That's right, every evolution has twice the tits. It's not even subtle, like they have breast-shaped protuberances on it or something. Look, 2, 4, 8. And yes, I know a lot of people would argue that these are not tits, just ribbons. And maybe that was the intention behind it, and not just a hasty retcon added to larger, clearer images when the lead developers noticed the only defining characteristic of this character was more breasts. But really, even if they were just ribbons, the symbolism and shape are obvious. They're never worn at collar height, there's always a ribbon square on the chest of the character. And you know how I made that crack about Munna being a half-formed fetus? Well, why not just go for broke and have an actual fetus Pokemon? I'm not exaggerating. It's literally a psychic fetus inside of an egg sac that never hatches. This is terrifying for multiple reasons. 1. It's an egg sac. It's not like the egg that Togepi kind of hatches out of. It's an actual embryo. 2. Being a zygote, it makes you wonder, does the sac ever break? If exposed to the elements, does the Pokemon die or go into violent convulsive shock? Would the fluid spill out? Is this a common event? I mean, they feel pain since they can be defeated, so how does this work? 3. Despite being an embryo, it can still breed. How does that even work? Talk about babies having babies, this thing is literally a fetus that has more fetuses. I guess they divide asexually? But you still need to breed it with something in order to get one, so ew. Number 4. These are unborn children that are made to do combat. The Pokemon problem is so endemic that some sick fuck took an aborted Kadabra fetus and taught it how to fight, likely using its mind-numbing awfulness to stun its first opponents before using one became the norm in combat. What's more, this cements it. Right here, this is where it's clear that either the designers have some big unresolved mommy issues, or that they designed all these Pokemon with a creepy underlying theme of motherhood. We've got a fetus, a rock vagina, a gothic Lolita who when she blossoms into womanhood becomes a literal wall of breasts, and an embryo. Why? What is the purpose of all this? Did this have a purpose? Were there maternal tones to the actual plot? Don't get me wrong, the plot of Black and White is a whole other rant, but I don't recall anything like the mother of all Pokemon or anything like that. So what's the purpose of these bizarro design choices? But you know what? There are creepy designs, and then there are downright stupid ones. Yes, I mean Vanillite. Seriously, I can't even imagine how this thing moves in the real world once it evolves. The closest analogy to a moving object design like this is a top. But never mind that. This is seriously one of the most lazy designs ever. Were they so bereft of animal designs that this was the best they could do? This wasn't even just one Pokemon. 3 entire Pokemon are dedicated to an ice cream cone. This is one of the worst things ever done by a designer. Then there's another stretch of decent Pokemon. Okay, the Pokemon that looks like the Pringles guy is a bit weird, but not necessarily bad. He just looks like Uncle Pennybags, I guess. Okay, wait. No. There's one. Clink. I forgot where this one was on the list, but this one is another one of those Pokemon on the level of Vanillite in the lazy design department. It's just 2 cogs. that grow into more bigger cogs. There's no definitive body shape, it's just cogs. Seriously, why not just make a Pokemon out of tendons while you're at it? Was creative burnout just reaching critical mass at this point? You know they must have just been,
holy shit, I just want to get to the dragons already.
The Pokemon that follow are pretty nice designs. I mean, Haxorus and his preceding evolutions are fucking awesome. I know I complained a lot about the others already, but this guy's fucking beastly, and he's possibly one of my favorite designs. Pure dragon, pure attack, pure badass. The polar bear's pretty good, though I don't know why the baby's defining characteristic is a giant frozen snot bubble that never quite falls. I mean, it's just, man, you've got something right there. Could you just, Cryogonal is, what? I guess it's a snowflake, but why? Seriously, I don't even know what I'm looking at here. Is this its face? Does it have one? Is it like Staryu? Whatever, it's not even worth it after the other ones, let's move on. I did like that you can have Lord Zed as a Pokemon. I also have to admit, I like how they Mr. T'd up Tauros here. Then there's the legendaries. It's not even that they have a bad design, save for 3, but we'll talk about that in a second. It's that there's a shitload of them. Seriously, this game has a baker's dozen legendaries, and they're not particularly difficult or even noteworthy catches. These guys are almost immediately attainable once you're in the particular region they exist in. The 3 that bug me the most, though, are the genies. Okay, first of all, they're almost completely palette swapped from each other. Change one small portion of the design and shift the colors around and you've got yourself a new Pokemon. And they choose a design that allows them to just stand there kind of shaking and floating, but otherwise not doing so much as uncurling their arms. Finally, they're, well, genie. That just doesn't gel, and is indicative of a greater problem with latter-day Pokemon, the amount of vaguely human-looking Pokemon out there. Doesn't that make having them enslaved to you and fight until they're rendered unconscious sort of more horrible than it already is? I don't mean anything by this, but if you want to design a game where this sort of thing is okay, wouldn't you want to dehumanize the creatures in the subservient role as much as possible? You may have noticed that I left a very obvious Pokemon off my list, and that's because I wanted to talk about the laziest, shittiest, most unthinkably lame Pokemon ever created last. I am, of course, talking about Trubbish. A fucking bag of garbage. This is the most slothful design I've ever seen in my life. You know the designer just looked around, desperate to think of a poison-type Pokemon, saw the janitor had forgotten to take the trash out, and had his eureka moment. I mean, Vanillite was bad, but you at least get the sense that the designer had to leave the building to come up with it. But really, this is even worse than Unknown. Unknown at least had a reason, such as it was, for being there. The whole Pokemon alphabet subplot made a modicum of sense, and would have even been cool if there was a shred of payoff to it. Trubbish is just a giant pile of shit they attached googly eyes to. If there was no evolution for it, I'd assume it was a mistake. A doodle that had jokingly been put in during the alpha stage and never accidentally removed. Until the game was so close to release that they just said fuck it, wrote a Pokedex blurb for it, and gave some laughable stats and typing before pushing its ass out the door. It's not as though the majority of the Pokemon in White and Black are badly designed in the end. It's just that the ones that are badly designed are so incredibly badly designed that when it does happen, it's almost shocking. Maybe they'll change it in the next one. Alright. Postscript. What the fuck is Oshawott last evolution supposed to be? I mean, I get it. Otter-style creature in the first form, slightly stronger version in the second form, and then holy clusterfuck, Batman! Weird conch shell horn, giant mustache, and all of a sudden a quadruped instead of bipedal, dumb fishtail all of a sudden. I don't know. I'm done already. It's not worth thinking about at this point.